Dude, never did it.
Hello! Welcome back to Never Did It, a movie podcast about guys who love movies but have not seen all of them. I'm Brad Garoon.
I'm Jake Ziegler.
We're going to talk about a couple of movies that came out in 1999. Jake, why don't you kick us off this week? Tell us about the movie you assigned to me, what it's about, and why you picked it.
Definitely. The movie I chose from 1999 is Michael Mann's The Insider. It's a movie I have a lot of knowledge of. I had a class in high school my senior year. I think the class was called Mass Communications or whatever it was, but one of our projects was to pick a movie that's based on a true story and research how true it is and how well the movie portrayed it and all of those things. And this was the movie that I picked for that. It was a little newer back then, I will admit, when I was in high school. So I know it very well. I think it's really terrific. Michael Mann, is a great director. Russell Crowe plays a guy named Jeffrey Wigand, who was one of the key whistleblowers in the tobacco trials of the 1990s, when the tobacco executives all stood up before court and said that they did not believe that tobacco use led to cancer. And Jeffrey Wigand was one of the guys who had information that shows that, yes, number one, yes, it does, and number two, they definitely knew about it. So it kind of follows that, and he did a whistleblowing interview on 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace, so there's a whole subplot about Mike Wallace and 60 Minutes and CBS and the turmoil that it caused within the network, just because the tobacco industry is such a big part of the American economy. So it was kind of a big deal for everyone involved, and just a movie I like a great deal, and one of my favorites from that year.
So I liked it a lot too. I'm not always so locked into Michael Mann movies. I think sometimes first off, Mann employs a lot of the time. He employs this cinematography that I don't know what to call it, but you see it a lot in like Terrence Malick movies, and Chloe Zhao's.
Like the big sweeping, that kind of sweeping.
More, there's that, but I think that's for sure part of it. But also it's shots that are too close up to really focus on any individual. In fact, there's very rarely a center focus on any one character. It's as much taking in I guess sweeping is a good word for it, although not all the shots are sweeping, but it's as much taking in the surroundings and the vibe as it is the characters. So I don't ever, in his movies, feel really attached to any of the characters. It was true in Thief, it was a problem for me, and James Caan is already a withdrawn actor, so it was hard for me to feel really locked into what was going on with him.
Scott Caan's father, yes.
Scott Caan's dad, I apologize.
Yep.
And then in Heat, which I think is better than Thief, same deal, except like you never really, I don't think feel so attached to what's going on with De Niro. That being said, the relationship between De Niro, like the cat and mouse between De Niro and Pacino in that movie is really fun. This movie, I feel like, was a little bit different because we do spend a lot of time with Pacino and start to feel for what he's going through, how he feels he hung Russell Crowe's character out to dry and has to fight to sort of redeem himself because he has so much journalistic integrity. But I never felt all that attached to Russell Crowe's character, even though he's the one really going out on a limb.
He's the hero, yeah.
Yeah. That being said, the movie's incredible. I love that Pacino's performance here is maybe my favorite Pacino performance.
Outstanding. I'd only rank it behind probably Donnie Brasco for me, and those are like 1A and 1B for me. I think he's so good.
So good. I just watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a movie that I think you have to watch twice. The first time I saw it, I was like, it's a solid 3.5-star movie. Like, this is where Tarantino is sort of falling in his later career. And then I watched it the second time, I'm like, nope.
It's great.
You gotta watch this twice.
It's amazing,
Everything in this movie leads to this scene. Anyway, I bring it up because Pacino is also amazing in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but he has like 5 lines.
Yeah.
In this movie, he is the emotional weight of the movie, and he is so subdued, but so intense, and not a tough guy, but at the same time, like kind of a tough guy, just in his own way. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think he's incredible in this. Also, Christopher Plummer, out of this world.
Greatest casting. Who else could be Mike Wallace?
No one.
Perfect. Yep.
Bookman is so good in this movie.
God, he always is.
what is his real name?
Philip Baker Hall.
Philip Baker Hall is incredible. He's great as a temporary villain in this movie. You know, he's not even a villain. He's just a guy who just did the wrong thing and doesn't want to admit it.
Yep.
But the line of the movie where Philip Baker Hall is explaining why he did what he did to Pacino and to Plummer, to Mike Wallace and to, I forget his name, Bergman.
Yep.
And he thinks that Mike Wallace is going to get his back. And Mike Wallace just looks at him at the end and goes, "You fucked up, Don."
Yeah.
The best line of the whole movie. And Philip Baker Hall's reaction, he was so not expecting to have Mike Wallace turn on him at the end. It was great. Where I think the only miss I'd say, a lot of it, look, it's super tense. It's a great paranoid thriller. Where at first you don't know if Russell Crowe's Wigan is really being threatened by the tobacco industry or if he's imagining a lot of it. And you wonder what he's going to do about it. Is he going to, his life falls apart. Is he going to kill himself? Is he going to go on a shooting spree at the tobacco company because he's staying in a hotel right across the street? There's not a great conclusion to that arc. Like, things do end up working out for him, but you don't actually see him reacting to any of that. It's all just like his interview gets played on 60 Minutes, and then that's sort of it. So I didn't feel like we got the catharsis of from after all the rough stuff that he went through. But the ride to get to that point is amazing. And this movie's a little bit longer too, but I was like ripping my cushions while I was watching.
Yeah. I have a different pick for favorite line from the movie. It's the one I remember. Well, it's still a Christopher Plummer delivered line when I can't remember which character is. One of the network execs says, "Oh, don't worry, this will all blow over in 15 minutes." And he says, "No, that's fame. Infamy lasts a lot longer."
I think it's the exact same scene. I think it's,
is it?
I think
yeah.
That's like a little bit earlier in the same scene.
Okay. Yeah, because I also didn't get a chance to rewatch this one, so it's been a little bit since I've seen it.
Yeah, actually, no, it's right after. It's the same scene. It's just because I can picture where Plummer is sitting, and it's the same position.
Yeah.
As he is. So yeah, it's just like that's a great bit from him. This is one of his best performances too. He's so good.
He did not get nominated for an Oscar for this movie.
That's crazy. 1999 is the weirdest year.
So it was, looking back on that year, always just, it's upset. Like, it's kind of retroactively upsetting. I mean, the Oscars are whatever, but look at some of the things that didn't get, like Pacino didn't get one that year either. Just Russell Crowe was the only one who got one. And I think he's great and everything, but yeah.
And also, my criticism of his role, it's not him. He is doing an amazing job. Oh. I didn't understand what accent he was going for at first. I'm like, why is he not Southern? His wife is. It turns out he's lived all over the place.
Yep.
Worked for a bunch of different companies and speaks Japanese. Anyway, very interesting character. He does a wonderful job.
Yeah.
Just bizarre. Bizarre that this got no love.
And it's where American Beauty kind of dominated that year, and like, in retrospect, no, it's not at all. It doesn't hold up even a little bit. Turns out, like, back in that project that I did, the movie is incredibly accurate, at least according to reports and things. But like, you could put the two interviews from 60 Minutes, or the interview from 60 Minutes and the one they recreated in the movie, put them side by side. It's like the same thing. He sounds exactly like him. He looks a lot like him. I mean, every word is like the same. So as far as like you wonder like how true is this movie? Like, it ranked very highly in a lot of those ways.
Well, I'm glad you brought up accuracy, because I want to talk about I want to talk about this here, and when we talk about our next movie, how much things from 1999 look like they're from 1999 to the point that it looks like parody. So, for one thing, the first exchange between Pacino's character and Crowe's character happens via fax machine. It's like very slowly they're exchanging faxes between each other, to the point that no one would do it in a movie now about the 90s. And the movie came out in 99, but took place, I think, in 95 or 96.
Early, yeah.
It's concurrent with the O.J. Simpson trial. They make sure to let you know that there's a newspaper that talks about the Simpson trial in the movie. But there's just watching Pacino and Crowe slowly exchange faxes between each other is so funny. And then the clothes. Russell Crowe is wearing what I'm sure at the time were supposed to be like very stylish suits, and they are so baggy. His pants look like a parachute. It is wild. And I have a few examples of that when we get to the next movie too. In fact, we could segue, except first I want to just real quick talk about how the best part of The Insider is the newsroom scenes.
Yes.
The scenes where they're deliberating how they're going to talk about this, how they're going to get around the fact that Russell Crowe's character has signed non-disclosure agreements. It's boring stuff that they make fascinating. through the importance that they give to what's going on.
Reading the script would probably not be thrilling, but watching these professional, like, just, Christopher Plummer and Al Pacino and, all the other, Bruce McGill, who, that's an underrated part of this movie too. Bruce McGill is that lawyer. He's fantastic. I mean, just absolutely perfect. He nailed. Again, he doesn't have much screen time as the others, but he killed it every time.
Speaking of the lawyers, I had to get a little sad when one of the lawyers was played by, just seeing Bruce McGill on screen just makes me so sad because he died.
Oh, that's right.
And he hasn't been in a movie for a long time. Like, yes, Christopher Plummer has also since passed away, but Bruce McGill is just like a tough. I don't know. I love My Cousin Vinny so much. Bruce McGill will always be an important actor.
Yeah, we can't do that movie because we've both seen that one.
Yeah, just know that that's a 5-star movie.
Yeah. And The Insider's a 5-star movie for me. I think, actually, looking at my list, it's my number 1 movie of 1999.
Oh, wow. So I went 4, and it did make I don't rank 99. The movies pre-2000, I don't rank in top 10s, but I do decades before 2000 as decades. Oh, and it is in my top 100. I do 100, and it is in my top 100 movies of the 90s. Yeah, it's just like, it's a longer, it's still a Michael Mann movie, and I don't connect with Michael Mann, like I said, all that much, but I liked it a lot. I gave it 4 stars.
Cool. Good.
Okay, so Blast from the Past.
Yeah, tell me why you picked this movie.
Right. So Blast from the Past, much lighter fare. Again, just like in our 2013 podcast, I chose comedy. Jake chose something much heavier. Blast from the Past is a Hugh Wilson directed movie starring Brendan Fraser, Alicia Silverstone, Sissy Spacek, and Christopher Walken. With Christopher Walken and Sissy Spacek are in supporting roles, although they carry the first half hour of the movie. And then another great supporting role by Dave Foley as Alicia Silverstone's best friend. This was a comedy that was just really popular with my family when it came out when I was in high school. We would rent it all the time from Blockbuster, which Blockbuster videos do make an appearance in the background of a few scenes in this movie. And I actually think it's like a really underrated Christopher Walken performance. He, for whatever reason, seems to really care about what he's doing in this movie. He's really going for it. Sissy Spacek's a lot of fun. Brendan Fraser does really well. I think Alicia Silverstone is a pretty big weak point in this movie as I was rewatching it this time around. But I just love this movie. So Christopher Walken and Sissy Spacek are living in California right around the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Walken is a genius, but kind of crazy. I don't know if he's a scientist, but he's just like a smart guy who builds a fallout shelter underneath his house in California. He works at Caltech. And one night he's having a dinner party, and Kennedy comes on the television and talks about the Cuban Missile Crisis. He asks all of his guests to go home. He and his wife go into the fallout shelter, and at that time, a plane crashes on top of their house. And they mistake the plane crashing on top of their house for World War III beginning, and the fallout shelter locks them in for 35 years. And so for the first half hour of the movie, they raise their son in this fallout shelter, and then for the second and third act of the movie, he leaves to find supplies to see if the world is habitable, and to find a wife from Pasadena. And it's just a fish out of water story that I think is really charming and really fun, and just has a lot of really funny lines that I still remember to this day. It's irreverent without being offensive, and it's it makes me sad for Brendan Fraser's career. I think it should have extended more as a leading man more than it did. And I picked it for you because I saw that you hadn't seen it, and it just seems like the kind of movie that everyone would have seen from around this time.
Well, and I think the only reason for that I haven't seen it is because in 1999 I would have been like 17 or so, and I was starting to get serious about film, and I was probably just a little bit too much up my own butt to think like that movie looks stupid. Like if it wasn't a classic, or if it wasn't if it wasn't Stanley Kubrick, I was like, no, I'm not going to see that. So I think that's really the only reason I never got to it.
Sure, and honestly, that's fair. I had 2 younger sisters, so there's a lot of room in my household for cheesy movies like this. This is a rom-com straight up.
Yeah.
But like Hugh Wilson and Brendan Fraser also came out with Dudley Do-Right that year, so it's not exactly like there was a lot of faith in what was going on with this pair around that time. What do you think of the movie?
I really enjoyed it. Even the beginning, I knew I had some good feelings about it because otherwise you wouldn't have recommended it, or anything. I mean, there's a tons of great movies from '99 we could have picked. So I didn't want to have too high of expectations though, and then I really liked that first half hour with Christopher Walken and Sissy Spacek. Like it's kind of a goofy premise, but they kind of play it straight almost, and it's that's real endearing. And then Brendan Fraser goes out there and yeah, he's just got this aw shucks quality about him. We're just like it takes about 5 minutes to get on board with him completely and just really start to like him and root for him and yeah, it was just nice. It was pleasant. I laughed more than I out loud more than I expected to, and yeah, it was just a nice, pleasant movie.
The thing that they do in the first half hour that I'm grateful for, and that would never happen now, is they don't make those 35 years a montage. We see these two people raising this kid. Like they stop for at least 5 minutes with each different like age of development for him. So when he beats Nathan Fillion shows up later as like a foil, a romantic foil. And so when Brendan Fraser can like handle himself physically easily with Nathan Fillion, we know why. When all this stuff comes up about where all the money comes from for all this stuff, it's been very like organically planted in the movie, and not like in an in-your-face kind of way. Like Christopher Walken, spoiler alert for a 24-year-old movie. Christopher Walken at one point gives his son these bonds, these stocks and bonds, and Brendan Fraser's as a kid just thinks they look really pretty because they assume that they're worthless because they think the world is. And later in the movie, that's how he can afford all this stuff.
He's got like IBM and Polaroid and
right.
These gigantic stocks. Yeah,
right. Millions upon millions, they say. And it's really good. So that part's really it all I feel like is really natural. And why Brendan Fraser's so excited to see certain things because his dad told him about it. Why is he so sweet? Because his mom taught him how to treat women, but not in. It's not in a condescending way either. He's never like, Eve, you're working. You shouldn't be working. You should be. It's just he knows to be nice, and that's why you like him.
Yeah,
it's a different look at that era too. It's like it's not misogynistic. It's old fashioned, which it's great. What do you think of Alicia Silverstone?
I thought she was good in it. I think she worked. And I liked her too because I'm a bit of a baseball fan myself. So she knew who the Rogers Hornsby was and what the Mickey Mantle card would cost and stuff like that. And I get excited by little baseball card things like that. So, but yeah, I liked her, and I thought she was real good, and their relationship felt. I mean, it at least has the sense to be like when Brendan Fraser proposes taking her down, into this underground tunnel at first, even though she thinks he's a nice guy, is like, let's think about this for a minute before I just go jump down into the tunnel with this guy.
I was a little bit sad that when I watched it this time, I kind of felt like she was. Not that she was in a different movie than everyone else. I think she was in the movie that you would expect from this plot. Like she was kind of hamming it up and kind of like doing a 1930s performance of like, I can't believe I'm getting into this again.
His Girl Friday,
like yeah, exactly that kind of thing. Whereas everyone else is like Dave Foley as her friend.
Perfect.
Oh my god, he's so funny. I mean, he's always funny. He's a terrific actor. Yeah. But he's at a level that I feel like everyone else in the movie kind of is. And she's kind of at the level of like the guy in the malt shop who ends up worshiping the family because he thinks they're from outer space or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
She's kind of like at his level. And he's a background comic relief character and she's the lead. So I think I like, in my head, I'm like, this is probably a 3.5-star movie, but I have so much nostalgia for it.
And actually, that's what I ended up giving it too. I mean, 3.5, I think is just that, and that's right where that movie should be. Not every movie is designed to get the 5-star rating. It doesn't have to. Yeah, it's nice. It's pleasant. It's it's good. And Brendan Fraser. I mean, I think it's good timing to have watched this now because his comeback is nigh. It's coming.
For what?
He's in this the new Aronofsky movie called The Whale, and it's like premiering. Premiering at Toronto and Venice and whatever, all the film festivals or whatever. I mean,
except that we know that Aronofsky movies don't always help the people who are in them.
Not always, but I don't know. I think Fraser is a little more likable than Mickey Rourke.
Well, I don't even mean that because I feel like Mickey Rourke was poised to do. He did a Marvel movie after that.
Yeah.
But I mean more like Jennifer Lawrence after Mother kind of fell off.
Hugh Jackman after The Fountain.
Yikes, that movie's terrible.
That's so bad.
I saw that in the theater and I got so angry. Granted, I think it was like 22 or 23, whatever. But I was so mad watching that movie.
I 100% fell asleep when I was in that movie.
The friend who I brought to see it fell asleep during it, and I was so jealous.
Yeah.
So I promised that we would talk a little bit about 1999 stuff that shows up in this movie that you would think it was fake or like too much if it came out now. But the Blockbuster videos positioned in the back of Dave Foley's apartment, I'm like, holy crap, great setting, especially because it was legit.
Yep.
But most importantly, they go to a club and everyone is really into swing music. And that was a legit thing that was huge in the late 90s. The resurgence of swing music.
Oh, swing music, yeah.
Swing, yeah. Like the Cherry Poppin' Daddies were huge.
Mighty Boss Tones.
Well, the Boss Tones are ska, but they did have kind of like a thing.
Yeah, they kind of got carried along with that.
They did. And the Boss Tones are a big part of Alicia Silverstone's career because they feature in the movie Clueless.
That's right, yeah.
But yeah, I just thought when they started doing swing, I was like, of course that's in this movie. Yeah. Of course.
It came out 3 years after Swingers, so I mean, it would have been right in that spot.
Exactly. Are there any other cool? I was just thinking about how there's a lot of like really cool cameos. One of the most fun thing about watching comedies is the people who show up in cameos. It's funny. The one that I noticed was not such a big one in Blast from the Past, but it was actually I had just watched Cliffhanger recently, and the bad guy from Cliffhanger shows up for about 10 seconds in The Insider in the beginning of the movie. He's like one of the investigators.
Oh.
But actually, I should have mentioned this when I saw The Insider. I was on the hook for it right away because I think the first actual conversation in person between Pacino and Crow about what's going on in Crow's car happens in Jersey City, right next to the building I lived in until a few months ago. Well, the building I lived in didn't exist until a decade after that movie came out. But yeah, the part where they're in the car in front of the Colgate sign and clock, that sign and clock are still there. The Colgate building is gone now, and it's become like sort of a de facto dog park, which is kind of cool. So that's this little thing about that. All right, so you said 3.5 for Blast from the Past and 5 from The Insider.
Those are my scores.
Yeah, I'm 4 for both. They are not the same, but they're both a lot of fun.
Well, I think
The Insider is fun.
Sorry,
in a different way. No, go ahead. The Insider is fun in a very different kind.
Yeah, well, I think rating movies, they're not all on the same scale, because they're not all trying to achieve the same goal. Some goals are more modest than others, and yeah, Blast from the Past is just a modest little cute movie.
What's funny is there are very few, you would think, because there's fewer comedies than there are dramas, it would be easier to be a 5-star comedy, but it is just not easy to be a 5-star comedy.
How many are there, really?
There's not that many.
I mean, a 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Of course, that comes to mind. I think Forgetting Sarah Marshall is a 5-star comedy.
Yeah, I could go with that one. And Role Models, I think is 5 for me too, if not.
And then what? There's some older ones like Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a 5-star comedy, but it's like a comedy. It's not a drama. It's an action comedy.
Well, Blazing Saddles, I think could be 5. That could be 5 stars, or The Producers.
I haven't seen the original Producers, and I haven't seen Blazing Saddles since I was a kid. For me, History of the World Part 1 is a 5-star comedy, but I don't think that's going to be the case for everybody.
Yeah.
And Boy, Taika Waititi's Boy, which is a dramedy at best, but that's a 5-star. I think I have that on your list.
I believe you do, yes.
All right, well, we'll be back with that at some point. But thank you for coming back to 1999 with us. See you soon.